I'm Dr. Barry, licensed psychologist, and here I share legal news from a psychological perspective. I was asked to cover this case of Annette Harvey. She was on trial for murdering her friend. And the psychological component that I wanted to take a look at was diminished capacity. There were allegations that she was suffering from delusions at the time, and that's what impacted the crime. The jury already has come back with a verdict, so spoiler alert, like I will be covering the verdict in this case as well. I wanted to take a look at her testimony, and then I might briefly talk about her husband's testimony as well. There has been some coverage on this case, and because I'm a psychologist and not a lawyer, I think being able to hear what some lawyers have to say about diminished capacity could help in our discussion on this topic. So let's dive right into her testimony. I'm going to skip around a bit. The full links will be down in the description.
I'm not sure it would surprise you that I don't know exactly where to start,
I understand.
but I'll start somewhere. All right.
Yes, sir.
You, and I'm really unclear on this. Did you grew up, I guess, in Bristol, Tennessee? Is that right?
Yes.
And we've heard some testimony from Rebecca Lewis that she lived in a neighborhood nearby where you grew up in an apartment complex. Is that correct?
Yes.
You were in an apartment complex and she was in a freestanding home, I guess.
Yes.
But there was a field between you.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yes.
Now you may.
Okay, so Annette Harvey, she's testifying in her own case, and there was no mental health expert that came in to talk about her alleged delusions or her mental health at the time of this incident. They did have some family members and some other people come in and talk about some of the things that she had said, some of the beliefs that she had, but there was no mental health expert that testified in this case. When I was watching coverage of this over on Law and Crime and also on Court TV, it was a little unclear in a situation where the defense is claiming diminished capacity that she did not have the intent required for the crime that she's charged with. It was just interesting to me that there wasn't a mental health expert that was really able to clarify or talk about things. The jury really just had the testimony from the trial of friends, family, other people, and then also the defendant herself. That's what the jury had to go on in this case. I will also say that prisons are full of people with diminished capacity, and yet they are still able to be held responsible for their crime. That mental health isn't an excuse, that just because someone has a mental health diagnosis doesn't mean that they don't understand that it's wrong to harm someone or that they didn't intend to harm them, because it can be difficult to parse out what was mental health and what was this individual's intent, desire, all of this, because the victim in this case had custody of Annette Harvey's children. I'm going to skip ahead.
Residence
We lived in Telford.
when you married
Yes.
in Telford. All right. And started raising a family, I guess.
Yes.
Right. Now, at this time in your life, had you had some previous, uh, you know, problems with, that had given you some concern and that you had sought some care for? Some mental problems.
Yes, I did.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
In 2007, I had, I really don't know how to explain it. I ended up hospitalized.
Where? Remember?
I spent 8 weeks in and out of Woodridge and, wow, I haven't,
Okay.
there's a hospital in Kingsport. I can't remember the name of it. That one. So between Woodridge and that one.
Did you receive treatment? I mean, did you receive medically assisted treatment, like pharmaceutically?
They gave me a lot of pharmaceuticals. I feel like they were changing my dosage and my different meds quite often.
Okay. And
And that's very common with a psychiatric hospitalization. It typically has a medical model where they're going to adjust medications.
were you, do you remember when you were discharged from the program?
It was early 2008.
Well, were you stable at that point, in your mind at least?
When I was discharged,
Yeah.
I think I had a long way to go. I remember, I think it took me maybe half a year or more before I began feeling normal again.
We heard your husband draw a kind of a metaphor of the tide coming in and out, in and out. Did that metaphor mean something to you?
I think it's a pretty good picture, emotional picture. Yes.
Um, did you have follow-up care? Did you keep going back, or did you
Well,
not?
I was supposed to have follow up care, but in order to receive it, you have to follow up. I did not follow up.
So time goes.
So at this point, I'm not sure what type of mental health crisis she had at that time. To me, they're not making it clear. Was it depression? Was it psychosis? Was it delusion? So I'm not clear on what exactly happened at that time.
Goes on. Is your marriage holding together?
Yes.
Are there valleys and hills and valleys in the relationship?
Well, I think it was certainly not typical. I think Michael and I got along remarkably well. We spent a lot of time together, and I mean, definitely not perfect.
No.
But
So the only reason why I'm stopping it here is because at the time of the crime, she believed that her husband was running like a child harm ring, and like it was very, very odd. The thoughts and things she was having, from what they report, from what they say. And I don't know like what she was watching, or because sometimes just if you watch too much on TV, or if you go down certain rabbit holes on social media, you can end up sometimes falling into some cult like or some very fringe beliefs. And that's something that the State Department, that people have put warnings out for, because there's been an increase in these internet based cults or groups. But she seemed to think that he was running one, which was odd. And of course, he denies all that.
I definitely think lots more good times than bad.
Well, you've heard him testify today that he's your husband for life. Do you feel like you're his wife for life?
Absolutely.
So we move on.
Y'all, that's some real love. Like he's standing by her in the midst of everything. Wow. Wow. Mm. I don't Yeah. Not gonna put things on the internet for my husband to see. I don't know. If I don't know. I don't know. We never want to find out. Because I've already talked on here. I don't, family members, if y'all do something, don't call me. Like if you're guilty, don't call me. That I'm not ride or die. Like, nope, mm-mm, mm. Snitches get plea deals, but I'm not gonna, be in a situation to have to be involved and testify against someone. This is wow.
Why don't we move to November of 2020. Could you tell us what you recall about that trip, that family trip?
Okay. Where should I start?
Well, we've heard from your husband that there was a birthday party arranged, that you were involved in getting a bed and breakfast reservation together. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
Um, do you remember where that bed and breakfast was located?
It was in Elizabethton.
Do you remember the occasion, what it was for? Was it a birthday party?
Well, I mean, I use that as an excuse to make a trip to Tennessee. Yeah, and our anniversary is the day before my birthday. So, yeah, we found an awesome B&B. It was a whole house on a huge farm on a mountain. It was paradise.
All right. So did you and Michael and the two children then drive down to Carter County?
Yes, we did.
And had you planned then, had you been talking to friends and so forth and invited them over for your party?
Yes, I invited quite a few people. Many declined, understandably. It was during the whole COVID thing. Those who felt comfortable coming, they came.
Right. We've heard your husband testify who was there. Robin happened to be there.
She dropped by.
And Robin is the victim in this case.
And I think it's fair to say that we have learned in this trial through other witnesses that this was the first time that you had some disclosures to make to your close friend.
During this trip, yes. During that trip, yes.
What happened?
Robin and I were alone at her house, and we were talking, reminiscing, catching up, hanging out, having fun.
Smoking some pot?
Yes.
And I think I might have cut off the fact that they were childhood friends. They had been friends since childhood. Robin was a beloved professor at a local university. And to me, it seemed like there was some jealousy. Like she was kind of jealous of Robin a little. She talks about Robin at the beginning of her testimony, just how smart she was. She skipped ahead grades. Like it seemed like she was pretty successful in the traditional sense, like in a traditional what most people would view as success, because a person can have all these things, can be a professor and all that, and their life be falling apart. So,
And I remember telling her that I thought my husband I would eventually die by his hand. And I remember thinking it was a completely logical and rational course of events.
Do you have any idea what might have triggered that with you?
I think that was a nervous laugh right there. She really should have managed that a little, because she's up here talking to her friend about fears that her husband was going to harm her, and she's the one that ended up harming this friend, like knifing them. I think it was 17 times. I don't know. It was a whole lot. Like, and the person survived for a few days. I think it was 11. Don't mess me with the details. Robin was able to survive for, I think, a little over a week. And then she later succumbed to her injuries. And her family just talked about how she fought throughout that whole time. And the family just wanted justice.
No,
Do you remember harboring those types of thoughts for some time, or is that just coming out of the blue, or can you explain it at all?
I remember from time to time throughout the years, thinking that probably if I got out of line, yes.
Was there some a report or a report of a report, whether it was completely unfounded or not, that your husband had been accused of something somewhere else, and that
This is sad. So there was an unfounded accusation with the husband and some child. It was unfounded, but I'm gonna skip past that particular portion.
what was Robin's reaction, if you remember, to this story? And honestly, how wild was the story that you had in your mind?
At the time, I was just like, if I ever get out of line, I know Michael's going to kill me.
I mean, did you have anything to base that on? Were you ever subjected to domestic violence by this man?
No.
He seems like the mildest mannered person on the planet. So he never abused you.
No,
in any way.
he's never once raised his voice to me ever. Never.
I don't think they're clearly articulating that this was a possible delusion. If that's the angle that they're going, to me, they're not articulating this clearly in in my opinion.
Did Robin suggest to you that she thought you were, that you were losing it, or anything like that? Did she accept what you told her?
She told me I was brainwashed.
She told you were brainwashed?
Mm-hmm.
By whom?
By Michael.
Did she do that in an aggressive way?
Yes.
Now, Robin was you tell me, but was she a physically powerful person?
Robin was very muscular. She was always strong as an ox. I envied her that a little bit.
She what?
I said I envied that a little bit.
This is coming off as a jealous friend to me. Like it's not coming off like mental health. I don't know. So I'm a psychologist. I am not her psychologist. So I have no clue what her diagnoses are. And we are going to cover the specifics of delusional disorder a little bit later, and then also diminished capacity, what needs to be present for that.
So, did you and Robin hatch some kind of a plan that you recall?
Not that night. Well, I was drinking, and I'm not a drinker. At the time, I wasn't a drinker. I remember I got pretty inebriated. And once I told Robin that I knew eventually Michael was going to kill me and I was going to die by his hand, she asked me more about that. And I'm like, well, yeah, of course. I mean, if I get out of line, him as the head of me, the husband, the head of the wife, it's his responsibility to take care of me if I get out of line. Till death do us part, right? So she told me I was brainwashed and I had to get away from him. And I remember I was sitting on the floor for whatever reason. And I remember her standing over me and literally screaming at me, saying, Annette, you're brainwashed. And I kept saying, oh, no, I'm not. He loves me. I love him, whatever. I kept disagreeing with her. And she kept on and on until she was literally screaming at me, you're brainwashed. You're effing brainwashed, Annette. You've got to get out of there. You've got to get out. And finally, I gave in. I turned into a puddle of just bawling and crying and agreeing. You're right. I am brainwashed. I do need to get out of there. Oh my God. I accepted it.
Did you? So where are the children at this time?
They're with their dad.
Are you a helicopter mom, a mama bear?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Did you? You heard your husband say that he had gone down to Cookville or something to pick somebody up?
Oh, that was the day of my birthday party, or
Was
the
that-
day before my birthday party.
That was the previous day then. And what
This
was
actual
happening?
night that I'm talking about
Yes.
just now,
Yes.
I'm not certain what day that happened.
Okay.
We were there for maybe 10 days, a week or 10 days. I'm not sure how long we were in Tennessee for the event, but yes.
Well, in any event, you heard him say that when he returned from picking up, do you remember who he went to pick up?
My daughter Amanda and her family.
Oh, okay. But then when he got back, things were strange or something like that.
Yes,
can't
I heard him
remember
say that.
exactly what he said, but did he say something to that effect?
Yes.
That when things got back, they were weird? Why were they weird? Why were things weird when he got back? Do you remember?
Well, I remember the morning when he left to take Amanda and her family back home. It was real early in the morning. He was crying.
You know what he's
He didn't want to leave. And I thought it really strange that he was acting that way. In retrospect, well, he and I haven't talked about it, but I've had 3 years with nothing but time to think about everything and try to piece it all together.
While she was in jail.
In retrospect, I think that he might have been crying and not wanting to leave because I was insisting that he go back to Jersey and leave me and the kids in Tennessee. I wanted him to take my daughter home to Cookville and not come back after us. It was
And
absurd.
of course, at this time, you had told Robin about your fear of him.
Yes.
Did anybody else, was anybody else told about
No,
these
No, sir.
visions?
no.
All right. In any event, though, what he's told us is that you all eventually did return to New Jersey.
Yes, sir.
And he said it was the strangest car ride he's ever had. Do you remember that car ride back to New Jersey?
I remember, well, I think I remember it.
Is there a difference for you between remembering something and thinking you remember it?
Yes.
With a true delusional disorder, there can be this break in reality where the person gets confused with what happened and with what they believed happened. And so I think that's kind of what they're trying to get at. But once again, I don't think that's being clearly stated.
You do remember getting back to New Jersey.
Yes.
Whatever happened in the car, you do remember that.
Yes.
And did things get back to normal for a while? Or do you remember?
The morning we got back,
I think the tears are likely real, but to me, she's crying at a portion where I wouldn't necessarily expect, unless this is just difficult because this was when a person knows they started to go downhill. I want to see when she starts to describe the crime, or I'm going to fast forward a little bit just so that we can see if there's a difference in how she's talking about things.
Just a few weeks, I take it, before you leave New Jersey and come to Tennessee with your children.
correct.
Do you remember the way you were feeling when you made a decision to leave your husband, take your children, and come to Tennessee?
Yes, I do.
How did you feel?
Terrified?
Do you think you would have done that if you were not terrified?
No.
What kind of means did you have to travel with? Did you have a pile of dough?
No.
You had a car?
Yes, sir.
What kind of car? Was it a Camry?
Yes, sir.
All right. Did you have a little bit of credit on your credit card?
Maybe.
Not much.
Probably not.
Did you have? How are you gonna get gasoline? How are you gonna buy food?
Well, I asked a friend of mine to help me.
You did.
I asked the church to help me. I had talked to the church, Jonesboro Baptist, and told them my plans to leave.
Is that the same church that this doctor preacher man was the head of?
Yes, sir. Dr. Robbins.
Dr. Robbins. I shouldn't be a smart aleck about it, but we'll talk about him in a little while.
Yes, sir.
But now, did you know him from the past?
Yes, sir, I did.
Had you been a couple of times to his church?
No, sir, not just a couple of times. And my husband was the head of his adult Sunday school. My husband taught his adult Sunday school class for probably a year.
So did you feel when you left for Tennessee that you had some support mechanism down here?
Yes, I did. I felt like I had the church. He told me to contact the women of the church and they would help me, and I did. And I really, really was counting on them. That was my main outlet, or whatever, for lack of a better word, support that I was really counting on.
Well, we know you had.
There was also a charge of robbery, I want to say. And so, okay.
Enough money to at least get down here.
Yes.
Right? Came down here, and we've heard that you maybe moved into a small trailer on a farm in Rogersville. Is that what you remember?
The Rogersville place was a B&B that I rented. It was a cabin.
Okay.
Yes.
And was it around that time that you purchased the knife that we've talked about?
Yes.
Yeah, you've seen the Facebook posting that you say, well,
Yes.
I'm purchasing this knife because I'm, for my safety.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Is that?
Yes. I was like, I walk alone at night a lot. And yes.
Well, was that true?
Yes.
I mean, you're out in the country.
I mean, I go out. Yes, sir.
I wonder if they didn't prepare the testimony. And I don't know what that strategy, because to me, the defense attorney should have an idea of what their client is going to say. Not a lawyer, psychologist. Remember, I'm a psychologist, not a lawyer. But it sounds like her attorney, he doesn't know exactly what her response is going to be when he asks her a question.
You liked it out there.
I loved it.
So as we go along, do you think that you're developing some kind of a long-term plan, or are you just kind of living day by day? How would you describe, what is going on in your world at that time?
Well, as far as my living arrangements.
Everything.
Oh, okay. Well, we were going to take up permanent residence in Tennessee. My plan was to rent the B&B in the interim till I found us a nice place to live. I found the B&B and rented it for a month. And on the other side of that, it was my plan and Robin's plan together to have Michael arrested. So we decided to go forward with that.
Now, did you have concern? You had a laptop. You had a tablet. Is that correct?
I did have a tablet.
Did you grow concerned that tablet might give your location away?
Yes, I found it in my things in Rogersville when I was unpacking. I kind of had forgotten I had it with me.
Did you and Robin talk about putting together or first of all, contacting law enforcement
Yes, we
with
did.
regard to your husband?
Yes.
And did you do that?
She got in contact with some people for me. I kept a steno pad with the names of the agencies, the phone numbers, the people, what they told me to do. It seems like each agency I would talk to would say, okay, now you need to contact this person. They would give me another person to call, and so on and so forth. So I felt like there were several different places that I talked to.
At some point, did you and Robin actually sit down and write out a PowerPoint presentation?
We worked on the presentation. I did the presentation on my laptop.
Now, what I didn't ask
Robin
you
and I
this.
worked on it together. Yes.
I'm sorry. Before that, how did you get a laptop, and why did you get a laptop?
I bought the laptop so I could put together all this information and send it to the TBI.
And how did you get the money to buy that laptop?
My friend Suzanne was
So I think what they're trying to do is talk about her state of mind at the time and just how odd some of her behavior was. But okay, we're going to keep listening.
giving me money to help me and the girls. She didn't know it was specifically for the laptop. I didn't at the time. But yes, I got money from my friend Suzanne, and that's what I spent it on.
All right. Is that what you wrote the PowerPoint presentation out on?
Yes, it is.
Did you receive help from Robin?
Yes, I did.
And did you send that PowerPoint out?
Yes, I did.
And where did you send it?
To the TBI.
Now, who are you speaking with over there at the TBI?
Special Agent Clay Moore.
Was he attentive to you? Was he helpful to you?
Yes, he was very kind to me. He gave me the email address to send whatever I wanted, whatever pertinent information I thought I had to him.
Did you provide him factual information?
Factual?
Yeah, now that you think back on it?
Not hardly.
None of it?
I thought it was factual at the time. I was bound and determined to send him every truthful fact that I could muster.
Now, we've heard that your friend Robin was a trained psychologist, a professor of psychology at
I didn't know that.
ETSU, correct?
Yes, sir.
And was brilliant in your...
She was always brilliant. Even when we were little kids, she was always brilliant. Robin was a genius.
Did she ever pull you aside and say, Annette, you're disassociated?
Let me interrupt this part right here because as a psychologist, I can't diagnose my friend. So if my friend is coming to me telling me this is what's happening, the first thought that comes to my mind isn't going to be that they have a delusional disorder. And once again, I don't think in this case, when they were talking about her past psychiatric history, they didn't clarify what happened. Was she having thoughts of unaliving herself, or like what was going on at that time? And so just because someone is a psychologist, so that's why I can't do therapy with my friends. I don't assess my friends' children because a psychologist as a therapist or within the practice of psychology, it works best when there isn't a dual relationship because that dual relationship can sometimes cloud your mind to you seeing things the way that they really are. So I don't love the fact that they're bringing this up. Defense is just doing his job. Just doing his job. I don't love that they're bringing it up.
You're falling apart. You've got some emotional issues.
No, sir. I remember one night she told me I needed therapy. I agreed.
You agreed?
Yes.
Was it available? Did you seek it out?
No, not at that time. No. We were working on our project.
You all were absorbed in a project, weren't you?
Yes, we were.
Maybe even obsessed by
I
the
feel like we
project.
worked on it pretty much every day.
Were you obsessed by it?
Definitely.
Were you both obsessed by it?
I don't know if she was as obsessed as I was. I can't speak for that, but she was definitely working on it with me.
I understand. Anybody else?
No.
Now, as we move up toward mid-January, did things begin to get more intense?
I felt like I was going deeper and deeper into this delusion. More and more sinister, crazy ideas kept becoming part of my reality. I felt like I was so open to suggestion.
You would hear something and it would trigger.
It became my reality when I would hear something.
Were you ever able to remove yourself enough from that frame of mind to be able to look in and see what was happening? Were you capable of doing that?
No.
And so would you say that was the same type of problem that Robin was dealing with also?
Excuse you, sir. Excuse you, sir? I don't think Robin had a delusion. I think Robin was believing her friend's reality. What? I don't I don't like that he brought that up. That's just me. Y'all let me know in the comments what you think.
I know she believed me with her whole heart, and she was trying very much to help me.
Of course. So I asked you, as we're moving up toward mid-January, are things, is your anxiety increasing? Are you starting to have more fear, and are you starting to lose more sleep? Tell us what's going on.
Oh, I wasn't
If you
sleeping.
know, if you remember.
I know I wasn't sleeping. I was afraid to go to sleep. I thought something terrible was going to happen. Excuse me.
And lack of sleep can make psychosis worse if a person is experiencing delusions and things like that.
I thought something, if I fell asleep, something terrible was going to happen to the girls. And when I woke up, they'd either be dead or gone. I was afraid to go to sleep.
So there's an incident that we've all heard about that happened at David Crockett High School. What can you recall about that? What can you relate to us about that incident, if anything at all?
Well, excuse me. That day on my drive, the girls and I had went to Rogersville to the B&B to get our stuff because we had rented a really nice place in Telford. Gorgeous place, gorgeous mountain view. Was so happy to get it. And
there seem to be these odd details about things. And sometimes when you're interrogating someone, when someone's doing this and they're giving these odd, strange details, like, because I think she'd much rather talk about the place she rented, of course, understandably, but like, I don't know, I don't think those details help her situation at all.
we were going to get all of our stuff from the B&B and put it all in the house, and we were moving in to the trailer. So that was the day that we were going to go get the last of our stuff, and so we had to drive from Rogersville back to Telford.
Was that when you all were living? When you were living next to Melinda and Craig's, or was that a different time?
We lived next to Melinda and Craig before we moved from Tennessee to New Jersey.
Okay.
But the new place that I found in Telford was just over the hill from the same.
All right.
Anyway, it was still daylight, and on my drive, and I was always taking the back roads. I was afraid to
Okay, y'all, this is hard. So I want to see how she does with either talking about what actually happened or the cross examination. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit.
And he was the only one who answered me.
Now, had you had any conversation with this Pastor Robbins, and any face-to-face communication with this man?
Not after I fled and came back to New Jersey or came back to Tennessee. No,
Okay.
I saw him at church a couple of times.
All right.
Correct.
So you called him.
I called. I know that I texted him. I don't remember talking to him on the phone that morning, but I know that I texted him and he answered me back in a text. I know that.
And what did you understand the message to be?
I remember him telling me to get out of there. If I was afraid for my life, to get out of there. And I said, well, they told me if I leave with the kids, I'll be arrested. And he said, well, they're your kids. And
You
if
were
you're
told if you left with the children, you would be arrested?
yes, the Miss Jacosi.
Because I think at some point the kids ended up in foster care, or because Robin had them, but it was because I think the state was looking into her or something.
show lady, I can't remember her last name, had told me that if I took the kids, that they would arrest me.
Did you think, is that why you thought you had actually kidnapped the children?
I don't remember even saying that, but I remember Mr. Hathaway saying I did.
You've heard that.
I've heard that.
You don't dispute it.
No.
So you decided to leave, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
You didn't want Annette and Becky to know about it?
Well, I did what my pastor told me to do. So
He didn't say to do it that way. He didn't say to harm someone in the process.
as far as I was concerned, he was the man of God in my life, and he was the one to turn to give me advice if I needed it. And he told me to leave, so I did. That's why I left. I was scared, yes. I was reaching out for help, yes. Asking people, what should I do? I'm scared. So I left.
We've heard what happened. That
Yes,
you
sir.
went out, you got in a cab. Cab took you over to the preacher's house. And at first we heard him come out and say, oh, this is not, this isn't, I really can't help you today. But then you heard the cabbie say that he came out and yelled at you and told you to leave his property. What happened? Which of those stories is true?
What I remember the pastor saying is, I wash my hands of this whole situation, Miss Annette. And I remember crying and bawling and saying, Pastor, well, what am I supposed to do now?
This is January.
It sounds like she's looking, because she said that she's open to suggestion. And if the way she's telling it is accurate, she's looking to other people to help her decide what to do, which is why.
Early morning, January. And you're alone.
And there was snow on the ground. And I did what he told me to do. I left.
At this point, you're alone.
Yes.
You don't have anywhere to go.
Well, I mean, I had a home in Telford. I was afraid to go back there. I was afraid of everything. I was afraid of everybody.
I don't remember what happened after that. Do you? Oh, eventually you end up at the Shell station. That's it. The cab take.
Before we get
Yes.
to the Shell station, let's take
Yeah.
a lunch break. The jury's
Okay, so let's switch over to some more testimony.
So what did you choose to do?
Go by Robin's house to check on my kids.
What made you think that or did you think that your children were at Robin's house?
No, I knew the children were at Becky's. I was going to ask Robin to call Becky for me.
What was on your mind?
Check on the kids. Somebody could easily, because The authorities knew where the kids were. They had it on record. They had Becky's address. They had Robin's address. These two people had been vetted to keep my kids. It would have been easy to find them at that point. I wasn't there to protect them. They were in danger.
Is that how you were feeling?
Yes, very much so.
Is that how you had felt in the at least a month previous to that, all the way along?
Yeah, but I knew I could protect them, or at least I hoped I could protect them.
Did you feel like something was there a drum beat in your head or something? Or,
What do you mean?
well, did you feel that it was something that was going to happen now?
Yes, I did. I felt a sense of urgency.
So what'd you do next?
I went by Robin's house to ask her to call Becky.
Okay. Where did you drive into Becky's house? Where'd you drive?
You mean Robin's house?
I'm sorry. Robin's house. Do you remember? Did you arrive in the front of her house or the back of the house?
No,
or do you
I
remember?
parked out back.
Is that where you normally parked?
Mhm.
Tell us what happened, if you remember, as you came to the back door.
I remember Robin coming to the door. I remember her. I remember the first thing she asked me was, what was wrong with my speech? Like, what's up with the way you're talking? And I told her I thought I was having a stroke.
You don't, I guess you couldn't possibly remember how, quote, how you were talking, could you?
I was having trouble off and on. I would have times where I felt like I couldn't get my words out. I would try to say something and it would be very hard to get what I was saying to just come out. It had me worried. Well, evidently at some point there was an altercation between us.
Do you remember walking into the back or not?
Walking into the back
Yeah,
door?
I mean, did she block you or assault you, or did you assault her, or did anything happen where you had to literally force your way into the house?
No,
You didn't have to force yourself into the house.
no.
You know that there's a jailhouse call where you told Michael that you had to force your way past her or something to that effect.
I heard that call. I said all kinds of crazy stuff on that call.
Do you remember anything after going into the back door of that house?
I remember getting hit with a bat.
Do you remember having a pocketbook on you?
Well, no. I mean, I've been carrying a pocketbook for like 40 years or more, so.
Do you remember feeling any kind of anger, hostility, desire to injure, or anything like that directed toward Robin?
I think they're trying to establish that she did not go there with the intent of harming Robin. Like, I think that's what they're trying to do, but
No, of course not. I remember asking her to call Becky. I asked her to call Becky. I do remember that.
Do you remember any harsh words? Do you remember any yelling?
No yelling. She told me no. Well, I told her I wanted her to call Becky and ask Becky to take the kids to Craig and Melinda's house.
Why did you want that to happen, you think?
Because I thought the kids weren't safe at Becky's house. Take them to Craig and Melinda's, they'll be safe there.
Why did you think they would be safe there?
I guess that was the last place that I had left that I felt was safe for us.
Do you know how you ended up in her bedroom? Do you remember anything about being in the bedroom of that house?
On that particular day, no.
Yes.
so like she's not crying, she's not showing any emotion right now, and she showed emotion during different parts of her testimony. Just commenting on that.
Any memory at all? You've seen the wreckage that room became.
I know.
Do you remember anything? You remember spinning around and being thrown about, or you throwing her about, or anything? Some kind of terrific fight going on inside that room?
I don't trust my memory, Mr. Spurrell. I know what I think I remember.
Well, I mean, are you saying you have a fragmentary memory or fragments of memory?
I'm saying just bits and pieces of flashes of pictures in my head that I've been trying to put together for 3 years. And I can't put it together.
Well, I think you need to tell us what some of those fragments are, however painful it is. You've heard your jailhouse call where you thought that somebody and that men were coming out of a bedroom with pantyhose over their head and struck you with a bat. You know that's not true, don't you?
I know that's not true.
Were you lying about that when you told that to your husband?
I said in the other phone call that I made it up. At the time that I told him, I don't think I was lying. I remember Robin like having a hold of me, like in a, I don't know, like almost like a bear hug or I don't know, like a wrestling kind of hold, and try to get
Probably trying to restrain her from hurting herself or anyone else.
her off me. I remember the bat. I remember seeing red and silver coming at me. I remember that. And I remember trying to run for my life. And I couldn't leave. I didn't have my car keys, and so I had to run back in and see where my keys were. So I couldn't see. My head was gushing blood. And it was blocking my. It was hard to see. And
Do you have any recollection of going to the freezer and getting an
I
ice?
remember grabbing ice out of the freezer.
Do you remember seeing Robin?
Hmm? Yes.
Tell the jury about that.
When I ran back in the back door for my keys, I looked and there was my keys right there on the floor. She stood up. In my mind, she had been like bent down to pick something up and then stood up. She may have very well been sitting there. I don't know. But she stood up and she looked at me and I looked at her. Our eyes met. And we just locked eyes and didn't unlock eyes. So I went to the freezer, grabbed ice, stuck it on my head, and ran out.
Had you retrieved your pocketbook at that point?
No, I just needed my keys. I just grabbed my keys.
Did you not think about your pocketbook?
No.
Do you think that if you had walked into that house with the intent to harm your friend, that you would have carried your pocketbook in?
No.
Would that make any sense?
No.
Do you remember driving out of the driveway?
So I was not able to find a video of the cross-examination. With the verdict, she was found guilty of first-degree murder. I'm just going to play that real quick.
The jury for the offense of first-degree murder during the commission of a felony. How did the jury find the defendant?
We found her guilty, Your Honor.
And did the jury set a fine?
$50,000.
Thank you. So say you wrong.
Yes, Your Honor.
Four-person of the jury for especially aggravated burglary. How did the jury find the defendant?
We found her guilty, Your Honor.
And did the jury set a fine?
$25,000.
You may be seated.
Thank you.
So say you all. This is count three.
So that was the verdict. Once again, I don't think it was clearly put together what they were trying to say, even if they had, because they were going with a diminished capacity. So let's talk about delusional disorder. And then I have a clip that talks with a lawyer talking about diminished capacity, or at least it's from Law and Crime. I'm guessing they're a lawyer. But A delusion is a fixed false belief based on an inaccurate interpretation of an external reality despite evidence to the contrary. Diagnosis of a delusional disorder is made when a person has one or more non-bizarre situations that are not real but also not impossible. Delusional thoughts for 1 month or more that cannot be explained by any other condition. And it can't be related to cultural beliefs or anything like that, but there is a delusional jealousy. There are bizarre delusions, a delusion involving a phenomenon that is impossible, not understandable, and unrelated to normal life. There are I can't say this word. I'm gonna make it bigger so y'all can see it. It's erotomatic, yes. Erotomatic, I believe, a delusion where they believe that someone of higher status is in love with them. There are grandiose delusions, persecutory. So it sounds like this defendant, they sound like they were alleging that she had delusions or paranoia, that she was being persecuted, that there were people out trying to get her. Somatic delusions can involve body things that's different from a somatic disorder. So, which can be hard to parse out what's what. Mixed delusions, thought broadcasting, a delusion where someone believes that their thoughts are being projected and perceived by others. And then thought insertion. So that's the delusion where they believe that people are putting thoughts in their head. The defense tried to take a strategy of diminished capacity. So to say that she did not have the capacity for first degree murder, and the jury thought otherwise. But here's what diminished capacity would be.
Unlike insanity, diminished capacity is not a complete defense to a crime. A plea of diminished capacity means you committed the crime, but you did not have the mental capacity to reach the intent element of the crime. Additionally, a plea of diminished capacity usually results in a lesser conviction, not an acquittal or not guilty verdict. Diminished capacity can be caused by a mental condition, disease, trauma, or intoxication.
And then this was something that I found from the Tennessee Bar Association, that diminished capacity, it's not a defense. It's a rule that allows the admission of evidence of the defendant's mental disease or defect in order to prevent the state from meeting its burden to prove to prove the mental state in question. So I'm guessing intent. All right. Insanity has long been an available defense, but there are several problems with an insanity defense. First, the standard is hard to meet. The burden is on the defendant to prove by clear and convincing evidence that at the time of the offense, a serious mental disease or defect prevented him or her from appreciating the nature or wrongfulness of the act. Second, juries generally are not receptive to the idea that someone is insane and therefore not criminally responsible. It doesn't work often, usually only when the defendant is so impaired that there is no question that there is no criminal responsibility. Next, the results of a verdict of not guilty by reason of insanity are not rosy for the defendant. They end up in a mental facility. All right. So if anyone wants to dive deeper into any of that, I put that in the chat as well. Thank you to the individual that recommended me taking a look at this case. I saw it was a trial that was happening, but I did not get to follow everything with it. I like being able to take a look when questions of somebody's mental state come into play. If they were able to have a defense expert, a mental health expert, it might have been helpful, but I don't know that anyone would have claimed that it was, I don't know, like, I don't know if there would have been an expert that would have said, because of this delusion, that she didn't have intent. So thank you all for joining me for this video. I trimmed my hair recently, so that's why it's straight. It'll be back curly by next week, so I'll wash it probably Sunday. I don't straighten it often, but when I do, I get allergic to water. So any little bit of humidity, any little bit of water makes it start to frizz up. We had a little bit of snow this morning, and it is what it is. Curly hair don't care. It's gonna try to get curly again. So, but it will be curly next week again. If you like this type of content, make sure to like and subscribe. I appreciate each and every one of you. And if you have thoughts on this case or other cases, make sure to leave them down in the comments. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.